Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Hello and welcome back to the Ask Ralph shows. We continue our series on franchising success. If you've missed any in this series, you can go to our podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can connect to the first of the series on this. We talked about the basics and pros and cons. Well, today we're going to jump into a discussion on the costs, the associated cost of owning a franchise. Now, in terms of capital investment, your franchise fee will be determined by the profitability of the business. And most companies have a scale to create this. And they can have very wide ranging, anywhere from $2,000 to $100,000 depending on the size of the system. That's what we call the franchise fee. That's the upfront cost. Now, in addition to this upfront franchise fee, there may also be a fee for the privilege or a license of using the product, attending training, and learning the entire business. There will also be a royalty fee. We get this a monthly royalty fee, and that varies anywhere from 2 to 10% or a particular monthly figure. So let's talk about what are the specifics that relate to the ongoing associated costs. Once we get past that franchise fee, and a lot of people don't realize this, but that may be negotiable. And I've worked with some clients, depending upon the structure of the franchise and depending upon how long the franchise has been in place, you may have some ability to negotiate that. Another thing you might be able to look at, is if they have a geographic-based franchise, you may be able to work a deal with the franchisor if you agree to expand your franchise agreement as you develop your particular site. You might say, look, and I'm going to start off in Delaware. Well, I promise to open, a store in Newcastle County. And then you say, okay, well, but here's what the other thing I'm going to do is if you'll allow me 6 months, I'll open up another one and then another one. And they may negotiate with you that upfront franchise cost if they see you moving in, a direction of expanding their brand. Now, in addition to that, there are some associated costs. Now, one of the big ones that a lot of people need to consider is the facility and location. You may have to buy a building or land or rent a building. If you rent a building, you're not only going to be responsible for the monthly lease payments, but you're also going to have to pay for what we call leasehold improvements. And not to get into a real basic thing, but most of the time when you rent a space, let's say you go to a particular shopping center, what the landlord is going to give you is called a vanilla shell. And it literally is white walls, concrete floor, and that's it. If you need something other than that, then you're going to have to pay for these leasehold improvements. Now, in some cases, a landlord will give you, what they call an allowance for leasehold improvements. But don't misunderstand this. You're still paying for them. They're just basically financing those over the term of the lease. In most cases, the franchisor will tell you what estimated leasehold improvements will be. The second component to this is equipment. And it really depends on the type of business that you're franchising. Different types of businesses will need various pieces of equipment. A lot of times there's long-term payments available for most equipment purchases. So for example, let's say you're doing a franchise of an Anytime Fitness store. Well, obviously, when you go into that, not only you're going to have those leasehold improvements of carpeting, walls and bathrooms and things like that, but you're going to need exercise equipment. As compared to, let's say you're going to open up a tutoring franchise. Well, in that case, you may not need as much equipment. You may need a few desks and chairs, and some basic equipment. The next thing is signage. Outside signage can be very expensive for small business owners. I remember going into business when I first started my accounting practice, and I wanted to buy, a sign that lit up. I thought I really had arrived when I had a sign that lit up from the inside. And, I called a couple of sign places and I was just amazed at the cost to this. It was really expensive. Now, most franchisors have developed a sign package that the franchisee is obligated to purchase, even worse. So now, you need to understand this going into this. They may say to you, well, you need to buy this sign package. That sign package could be very expensive. So you need to be aware of that. Opening inventory. And this really can be expensive as well because you need to know how much inventory you're going to need. They're going to give you an idea what that is, but you need to have the money ready to do that. Now, the biggest one, and this is the biggest pitfall, and we'll talk a little about that when we get into this series a little deeper, and that is working capital. And this is where I see a lot of small businesses and franchisees fail. For rent, you may be required to deposit first and last month's payments as well as a security fee. You'll also have to pay a deposit for electric, gas, and telephone companies. They're going to want deposits because they don't know you. They don't know if you're going to, take off on them. You're going to need some working capital and money in the cash drawer to make change. Then that could be a small amount, but it's still going to be something. You need to pay your employees. You'll need money just to operate until there's a cash flow. You can't expect that the day your sign goes up and the day you open your doors, that there's going to be a line down the street of people, wanting to buy your products. So you're going to have to front some of that money. You're going to have to allow yourself some additional capital before the bills are paid by the customers and returned to you. Another big component is advertising fees. Now, this could be local advertising that you're purchasing, or could also be, in more common cases, a regional or national basis of advertising. Most large franchisors require the franchisee to pay a certain amount into a national fund used to advance the concept. The upside to that is the benefits are quite substantial in terms of the visibility you get with the type of advertising that most franchisors do. So that's really a great benefit. But you need to realize that at the front end of this, you're going to have to understand, what is it that you're going to have in capital. And that's the thing, is a lot of people don't realize it. Okay, well, I've got the $35,000 to buy the franchise. Great, you've got that. Okay. And then now I've got the money to buy the equipment. Oh, fantastic. You got the money to buy the equipment. And you scraped enough together to get the first and last month's rent together. Great. And somehow or another you were able to pay for the signs. What people don't realize is then, you're going to have that working capital, to pay for the electric, to pay for the telephone. And biggest one is to pay for your staff. It's going to take time for your franchise to develop its own, source of revenue. It may take time to get that started. You may be looking at, 60, 90, 120, 180 days of, revenue that's low, and you're going to have to front the cost of all those things. So that is the key. You need to make sure that you have, your ducks in a row as it relates to having enough working capital. Now, don't miss what I'm saying. I have seen so many businesses fail. These are people that have come to me. Maybe they're franchisees. Maybe they're just starting their own business opportunity we talked about earlier. And I will say to them, okay, how much cash do you have? I remember one particular. I said to him, how much cash do you have? And he said, I've got 3 or 4 months. And his wife said, that's not true. And, it was 6 weeks later that they closed up shop. And I knew it was going to happen because they were undercapitalized. So when you're looking at buying a franchise, make sure you understand the associated cost and what your expectations are going to be, because this is vital to being successful. You need to build a plan for capital. So I hope you've enjoyed this part of the franchise discussion. We're going to talk about the franchise business model next.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Sazio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Sagio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.